Hi everybody. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a text adventure game using user-defined functions. So let me just show you a brief example of what this should look like. So it's just a text-based choose your own adventure sort of story. And here's my example. You wake up in a cold, dark cave. It smells like mold and dragon dung. After your eyes adjust to the darkness, you notice two paths, a left path and a right path. Which path? And then the instruction says type left or right. If I type left, it says after walking for a few minutes, you stumble into a large chamber that echoes with each footstep. Continue through the chamber, continue, or turn back. Sure, why not continue? What could go wrong? And there's a monster, and you have some options. And at this point, I'm just gonna stop because you kind of get the point. You make decisions. Your decisions have different outcomes depending on which option you choose. So before I move on to how to actually create a text adventure game, I just want to review a little bit about user-defined functions. So you might already be familiar with using built-in functions in Python, things like print. When you print, you are calling a function. If I say print hello, print is a function that's built into Python. In between these parentheses, I pass arguments to the print function and it prints some text. Another example is the integer function. Let's say I have a string of the number 2. The integer function converts it to the integer 2. So I could do integer 2 plus 2, and it'll do some math with it because I converted the string 2 into an integer. Because I used the integer function, I passed the string as an argument this time. So that's calling a function. That's not defining a function. In Python, you can define your own functions by using the keyword def, def. And then giving the function a name. And you could specify any required arguments, or you can leave them out if there are none. So I defined my function to simply print hello, and then I'll say, I'll just call my function. And it prints hello. I can also specify an argument. So if instead maybe I want to define a function that adds 2 numbers. So I'll actually specify 2 arguments. I'll say add A and B. And then I'll say C equals A plus B, return C. It'll actually return the result. So if I add, print, the 2 added numbers, so I'll say 2 and 2. I run it and it prints 4. Right? I passed 2 and 2 to my add function, which I defined. I defined my own add function. And what it does is it just takes those 2 arguments, A and B, whatever numbers you put in there, and it does some math with them, and it returns the result. In fact, I could even condense this a little bit. I could just say return A plus B. It still runs. I just split it up into 2 lines to sort of just to split up the steps. Sometimes I find that a little easier to read, but it isn't necessary. So that's a quick rundown of using user-defined functions. So you can use user-defined functions to create a group of code with a name, and then you can call that group of code by using its name. When you call that function, it runs what's inside it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a whole bunch of functions that are going to define segments of the adventure game, like kind of like rooms in a dungeon or something like that. And depending on which choice you make, do you take the left path or the right path? Do you open the door, or do you turn around and run back? Do you fight the monster or try to run away? And depending on which choice you make, you'll use if statements to say if you choose one thing, it'll call this function. If you choose another thing, it'll call that function. So let me just define a start function. And this is just going to be the introduction. So I'll print some intro text. I'll try to make it somewhat similar to the example. And I'll specify exactly how to format the response. As I choose left in quotes or right in quotes. And notice I'm using single quotes for quotation marks inside my string because I use double quotes on the outside of the string. I could do the other way around. I just can't I can't use double quotes inside my string if I used double quotes to mark the beginning and end of the string. So I said choose left or right. And then I'm going to skip a line and provide a little command prompt. So it'll do something like, and then in order to do anything at all, I need to call my start function. Nothing happens until I call that function. So I have to put start down here. So if I run this, it calls start. It says you awake in a dungeon, and that just prints that text. So I actually need to get user input. So actually I'm going to I could make this an input statement, or I could print and put the input separately. It doesn't make a difference really. Just for the sake of condensing all of it, I'm going to make this my input. So I'm actually going to change this print to choice equals input. And I'll have that prompt. So now when I run it, I have the option of typing something. After the user makes a choice, I'll need an if statement to decide what's going to happen next. So if choice equals left, call the function left. Notice I haven't defined a left function yet, so I will need to define a function left. Elif choice equals right, call right, and I'm going to have an else. If you don't say left or right, I'm just going to call start again. So it just kind of bounces back to the beginning if you mess up and you try to, if you don't type something correctly. Now, this is case sensitive, left with a lowercase l. What I can do is I can just convert choice. I can just convert this string, the result of calling the input function, whatever the user inputs, to all lowercase, and so it'll match. So it'll say dot lower to convert whatever the input happens to be to all lowercase. If I don't include this, let me just comment this out briefly. If I don't include that, I don't actually have a left function or a right function, so there won't be a result. Let me just for proof of concept, print you went left. Now, it's not really going to do anything meaningful, but it will prove that it ran this part. It will prove that it ran this section of code. So if I say lowercase l left, it says you went left. If I run it again and I say uppercase left, it bounced me back to the beginning. Why? Because if you mess up, it bounces you back to the beginning. Why did I mess up? Because this is currently case sensitive, and if I use uppercase letters in any form, not all, it doesn't have to be all caps, if I just even one uppercase L, it isn't matching this left. So I have to, if I use this .lower function, it'll just convert my input to lowercase and it'll match. So this time I can do all caps left and it says you went left. I can do mixed capitalization and it still says you went left because it's converting my input. So that's what this .lower is for, is to convert the user input to lowercase. Okay, so I really want to do something more than just say you went left, if I choose left. I want to call the left function, but I really need to define the left function so something meaningful happens. So I'm going to define a left function. What happens to the left? And so this time I have the option of typing chest or door to open a chest or open a door. And you can see where this is going. If choice equals, oh, I should make this .lower, of course. If choice equals chest, I'm going to call a function for chest. Elif choice equals door. I'll call a function for door. That means I'll have to define functions for chest and door. And I'm just going to wrap this up because it's just a quick demo. So I'll say the chest explodes and you are very dead. And the door says the door leads outside. You walk away safe and sound. Wasn't that a nice little walk? And no peril whatsoever. So just trying to wrap this up. The idea here is you can define, just I'm going to split up these separate functions just visually so it's a little easier to see. The idea is just that you define each of these functions and then whenever you need them, you just call them and it runs whatever's inside them. You can use the if statements to control the flow of the program so that if you choose one thing, it calls one function, and if you choose a different thing, it calls a different function. So that is really all you need to know to be able to begin making a game like this. One other thing I'll point out is I'll just do this one more time just to demonstrate and then run through it. If you have an else at the end of your options here that just sends you back to the function you're currently in, that just catches any errors. So this is inside the left function. The else here, if the user input isn't chest or door, it just calls left again. So it goes back to this same choice. The function just calls itself. So if I say left, walking down the path and eventually reach a large room carved into the stone, there's a chest and a door. If I type, I don't know, right, there is no right. It just bounces me back to the beginning of that function. It was running the left function. It just calls the left function again. And this time, if I say chest, I open the chest and I'm dead, and that's it. Game's over. So that really is about it. Hope you enjoy making your own adventure game.